Youth drinking in Minnesota has actually declined over the last 10 to 20 years, where youth vaping is skyrocketing. We've all heard the statistics, we all heard the stories. I think it was just last summer. So I found one statistic that showed vaping in 8th grade, so 8th graders vaping nearly doubled, and another statistic that showed the amount of young kids vaping that are 8th graders has increased 95% since 2016. We need to do something about that, and I think this bill is a good start. We talked about the penalties in judiciary. We have had many philosophical discussions in judiciary about should we be criminalizing addiction, should we be treating addiction, and we kind of had the discussion about this bill too on should we include those penalties or not. The possession and use and purpose penalties, PUP penalties as they're called, are not in the federal T21 bill, as Senator Chamberlain mentioned. That's the bill President Trump signed, and I believe we should mirror that bill for clarity for our retailers. In the Judiciary Committee, we heard from a woman with the American Lung Association who covers the northern Minnesota territory. She mentioned that the police chiefs from Pequot Lakes, Baxter and Brainerd helped lead on this issue. They do not support having kids penalized. They didn't think we should have those penalties in this bill. She talked about discussions that she had and attended at several communities across the state, including the Beltrami County Board meeting, where they discussed and they were worried about including the penalties because of unintended consequences. The penalties that we have today are not deterring people from smoking. They are not deterring kids from smoking. I think this bill takes that philosophical approach that we discussed in judiciary and takes a public health approach. So I think we should do that. I think we should try it because, again, the penalties right now are not deterring kids from smoking. So the DARE program is an educational program, I believe. And I think that's what part of the purpose of getting rid of some of these, we're in the conversation in local communities of getting rid of some of these PUP penalties, the possession and use penalties, is because they believe we should try, they aren't working, so we believe we should try more education. Both in drinking, I think the DARE program also does alcohol, they do tobacco, and I think we need to expand on that. It is education. There are penalties in the bill, and the bill also doesn't disallow sanctions. So if you're on the football team, or you're in band, or you're on the swim team in school, they can still sanction you and say, no alcohol, no tobacco. It just provides more of a diversion program to help move our kids, and we don't get them in the criminal path, we divert them. It is a philosophical change. Do we want to treat addiction? Do we want to prevent addiction? So my dad was drafted into the Korean War. He never really talked about it, and when he did, it was on 2, maybe 3 things. And mostly it was about he was upset with the military for 3 different things. First of all, when he was drafted to go to Korea, and he was in the DMZ zone in Korea, he was playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And one of his goals or aspirations was to actually see if he could hit a home run against the Green Monster at Fenway Park. And because he was drafted, he was upset with the military that they drafted him because he, again, then never had that chance. He also worked the cannons in the military zone, DMZ zone in Korea, and so he had a hearing loss due to that. And then the third thing that he was mad at the military about when they drafted him was they gave out free cigarettes with your military rations, your lunch. He got free cigarettes. So at 18, 20 years old, he became addicted. So the military gave him free cigarettes and he became addicted. And he fought that addiction and he smoked until I was probably a teenager. And I remember how hard it was for him to quit. And he wanted to quit because he didn't want to just tell us not to start smoking or do drugs. He wanted to be able to say, don't smoke. So he quit, and that was very, very hard. It is addicting. This is, again, how do we treat addiction? And I have the most respect for the people in the military, and I have the most respect for what they do, and I appreciate for what they are doing, but I don't want them to get addicted. I don't want them to have to come back from the military or be in the military and have to fight that addiction like my dad did. This isn't about giving them freedom. This is about giving them the freedom to not start. This is about giving them the freedom to not have to face addiction. I think it was back in 2013 in tax committee, one of the committee members kind of just made a casual remark, well, maybe we should just raise the age for tobacco to 21. And Senator Eaton jumped on that and said, I'll second that. So this has been around for a while. Thank you to the authors of the bill for their work over those last 7 years to improve the bill. And I also want to thank the American Lung Association, the American Heart Association, and the American Cancer Association, and Clearway, Minnesota, for all their work on this bill and for their advocacy to stop and reduce smoking, and particularly youth smoking. I mentioned on the floor last year when we were having a debate that I have third graders in my district. I've had teachers from schools in my district come up and tell me that they've had third graders show them their little vape pen and all excited because look what I got, teacher. And that teacher was shocked that that's a cigarette. And the kids did not know that that was a cigarette. So they don't know that these are cigarettes. They're just excited that that's the cool thing, and that's because the tobacco companies have marketed to them. So I think this bill will go a long way to reducing that smoking in schools. I've heard from teachers, and I know the Department of Health has heard from schools on what to do with all the vape pen products that they have confiscated. And so I think this bill will help keep those products out of those schools. This bill will help prevent kids from smoking and vaping, and I think that is good for Minnesota. Again, thank you to all the authors of the bill and their hard work, and I ask for a green vote.